suckers. I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Mga kaibigan, ito po si Kuya Bert Kawili.
And this is Miles Salvador from Australia.
And I'm Norb Kawili, also known as Norbcam.
Kung gusto niyo po ang latest news and events from the Philippines at yung local Filipino community, Phil-Am Radio po.
We play Filipino music and interview guests from all around the world.
And I'll keep you updated on the latest Seahawks and sports news.
Kaya always tune in, Phil-Am Radio every Tuesday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
And in YouTube and Facebook. Salamat po.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Good afternoon, Seattle. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio. I am Monique, your host, and in the next hour, I will have someone extraordinary that I had the opportunity to invite on my show. My guest today had enjoyed a storied career in politics, both at a local level, state level, and national level. He is also uniquely qualified to comment on the mental health crisis that we as a country are facing. Every week, every day, incidents of senseless and irrational killing, shooting of innocent school children, enraged drivers on the roads, incidents of confrontations at stores, the opioid crisis and death due to suicide and overdose, etc. In the next hour, we will go into details and have a discussion on this. Please welcome to Afternoons with Monique radio show, retired psychiatrist and U.S. Representative, Dr. Jim McDermott. Dr. McDermott, how are you doing this afternoon?
Can you hear me now?
I do. Thank you for joining me on the show.
I can't hear you at all.
Oh boy. Dan, can you give us a hand here? Dan is our producer. I can hear you just fine, but for some reason, we are not hearing me. So just give me a second to test this. Audio seems to be working. So let me know when you can hear me. If not, we have to use an alternate method of recording.
I can't hear you.
Okay. So leave and come back.
You can hear me?
Okay. So I'm not sure why this is happening, but maybe try the mute button. Can you leave the screen? Read the private chat, Jim. Can you see the private chat? Okay. Let me call Jim on the phone real quick. Jim, I'm calling you on the phone. I think he's texting me. You might want to unmute me, or according to the engineer, you may have to shut down the computer for just a second and come back, and it will fix the problem with the volume.
Okay. I'll shut my computer down.
And restart. And
restart.
re-enter.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to give Dr. Jim McDermott a minute to shut down his computer. But, every week I come across businesses in the community, and I'm going to take this opportunity to mention a business that I came across that I feel I should promote, not because I'm paid. I'm not being paid to do this, but I feel like in the community there are businesses that should be supported. I just went to my optometrist after many years and had a great eye check, and they're a small little optical shop in the Northgate area called Seattle Optical, and it's just a small and pop with one doctor there. He checked my eyes. I thought he did such a tremendous job, and I just wanted to give him a shout out and give him a prop here, since we're waiting for Jim to come back on to Afternoons with Monique, episode number 103. Dr. Hoffman at Seattle Optical, if you have eyes, vision needs, glasses or contacts or eye problem, check that out. I think Patricia, who managed that office, was also very accommodating and helpful. So I just want to give them a quick shout out, appreciate their work. And if I come across any business, small business in the community that I feel, a little bit obscure and they need some support, I would be more than delighted to help them out just by a quick mention on my show. And then in the Northgate, North Seattle area, if you live around there, be sure to, have your eyes checked using them. All right, so I have a whole list of questions to ask Dr. McDermott today, and we have a whole hour to explore different topics. One or several topics that I mentioned before Jim came on was the mental health issues. We're going to talk about Roe v. Wade for a minute, in addition to, of course, at the beginning of every episode, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can't hear you.
Try the mute button on your computer. See if you can unmute me.
Everyone can see and hear you, but you can't.
Speakers on, headphone. Try the headphone. Okay, I'm going to call you again.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. McDermott. So there is a private chat on the side where the engineer will instruct us if there's any headphones or issues. He's suggesting that you use the headphones, plug it into the computer, and just use that if there's a problem with volume. There you go. Okay, so maybe we'll be able to fix it with the headphone. Can you hear me now? Okay, he's plugging it in. Are you able to hear me through the headphone, Dr. McDermott? Yes?
I don't hear you. I'm still hearing you through my phone, I think.
Oh, I see. Put me on mute and see if you can unmute on the phone and see if you can hear me through the headphone. No headphone? Nothing on the headphone?
Nothing on the headphones.
Okay, so the engineer is writing to us on the private chat on the screen. You see the comment and private chat? That's where he's giving us instructions. So I'm just following his instruction. Is the volume on the computer on? So he's saying, he's saying that the problem is not on my side, but on your side.
My performance is 100%. My volume. So I don't know. I don't know what the problem is.
So you shut down the computer
I
and
shut it
you
down.
came back. Okay.
I came back in through your link, and maybe I'm supposed to click something on the link, but I didn't see anything to click.
I have an idea. You cannot hear me, but I can hear you, right? But you can hear me on the phone. Right. So let's leave the phone on. Yeah, let's leave the phone on your side, and maybe I'll put you in the mute on the phone here, so that I don't have any echo. And how about this? Okay, so let's do this. You can hear me fine, right?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay, we went around the problem, and we'll continue. All right, perfect. So I have introduced you to the audience during the time that you were gone. You had enjoyed a wonderful, long career in the U.S. Congress at the state and local level. You know, and you have a very uniquely qualified degree as a psychiatrist, and you have worked as a psychiatrist for nearly 20 years. So we're going to ask you questions that is on everybody's mind today: the mental health crisis in our country, the opioid crisis, suicide and overdose, how we can best help our society function better. And you have enjoyed such a long career that we cannot help but glean some lessons from your experience. So let's start. I always start my show with getting to know the interviewee, a little background, so people get to know you. I'm sure most people who are listening in know who you are, but just to go over some of your background refresher before I go into the questions that are on everybody's mind today. So can you share with us just a little bit of a background? And we have about, 50 or so minutes remain, actually 40 minutes remain on the show for me to ask all of these wonderful questions that we want to learn from your experience, your knowledge, and your wisdom that you have earned and learned during your great career. So please share with us a little bit of your background, where you were born and where you went to school, your education, please, Dr. McDermott. And should I call you Congressman or Dr. McDermott?
Most of my friends call me Jim.
Okay, I will call you Jim. All right, thank you, Jim. So share with us your background, please.
I was born in Chicago, and I went to Wheaton College, and then I went to medical school in Chicago, and spent most of my professional career in Chicago until I came to Seattle in 1966 to finish my career in academics at the University of Washington. Then I went in the Navy for 2 years, came out of the Navy, and went into politics. And I mixed politics and medicine for the rest of my life. The legislature was not a full-time job, so I practiced medicine on part of the time, and I was in the legislature part of the time, and I did that for 16 years. Ran for governor 3 times and lost, and decided, well, maybe I should think about going back to medicine. So I went back into medicine, went to work for the State Department, and I worked in Africa and lived in Kinshasa in Zaire. I was there for about 9 months, and then I came back and ran for Congress in 1988, and then I served 14 terms. I spent 28 years in the United States Congress. That's the quick and dirty of my career.
When did you say you started? 1988 or 1989?
Well, I was elected. The year election was in 88. I went to Congress actually in January of 89.
I see. Okay. So, you have been in our state, all the problems. People are talking about it on TV, on social media, in conversations. Um, let me before I get into all the exciting questions that I'm saving for the second part of the episode, let's share with our audience some of your work, your accomplishment that you feel you have accomplished during your 28 years in Congress with the legislation here in Washington State as well as U.S. Congress.
Well, I think the first thing about a legislature is that nobody does anything by themselves. It's always done with a group. So I would not want to say I did this or I did that, and as though I was the only one who was involved in it.
Right.
But I was involved in healthcare from 1970 right on through my whole career. I've always believed there should be a national health insurance program. And when I left Congress in 2016, we had managed to get the Obamacare program in and started in the Congress. And it's not perfect. It's got problems. It needs to be expanded, but we got a long way toward, we got about 100 million people additionally into healthcare. And I think that's probably the thing I would consider most important. I did other things. I worked in trade. I established the trade policy for Africa in the African Growth and Opportunity Act. When I went to Congress, no one in Washington, D.C. had any interest whatsoever in the government in dealing with Africa. There were trade policies toward Asia, and there were trade policies toward the Middle East, and there were trade policies toward Central and South America. But 800 million people are living in Africa, and we're just ignoring them. So I put the first policy together and George Bush signed it in 2020 or 2000. I did lots of other things. I was a chairman of the work of the committee on the Ways and Means Committee that was responsible for unemployment insurance and welfare and foster kids in the society. So I spent a lot of my time working on the problems of people who were falling through the cracks in the society. And I did lots of things in that. One of the most important ones, I think, was a bill called Fostering Connections, which was really a bill to deal with foster kids. You know, when the government takes a child away from a family and takes responsibility for them, they then have got to be mother and father and everything else to the child. Right. And as the kid grows up and grows out of that into being an adult, they don't have anybody out there to help them. So I wanted to smooth the process of going from being a foster child and being into the adult world. And I worked with Seattle University, and they had a program for helping students get into the programs at the university. And I've written a book, and all my money for the book goes to that program, because I really think education is the way that most people are going to get ahead in the world. And if you don't help people to do that, many times they won't be able to do it for themselves. So I did a lot of work with kids, and I was a child psychiatrist. So I knew about the problems of kids. I worked in detention centers and with suicides and all kinds of things. And I did all of that in the Congress, using my colleagues helped me. I mean, they had the same problems in their district. So we would work on various projects. I did so many things in 28 years, it's hard to pick out which
just a few, yes.
Which were the most important ones. But I would say I changed the unemployment laws so that people got paid unemployment for things that previous to my coming to the committee, women did not get unemployment when their husband lost his job and they had to move. They didn't get unemployment. So I changed that and made it so everybody got unemployment when they had to leave a job. So I worked at that kind of thing for 28 years.
Right. And I know that universal health care and Obamacare was one of your passionate projects that you had worked long and arduously during your terms in Congress. Um, that probably is one of the things you haven't mentioned that, but I would imagine that is one of the things you have done, and because of your medical background, we'll talk about that in a little bit too, if I may.
Sure.
Now, there are several people that had written to me questions that they want to ask you, so I'm going to represent them, the community, in asking you. If you have a problem hearing me, let me increase the volume here a little bit. So, okay. So 28 years in US Congress. Did you do everything you wanted?
No,
Okay.
no one gets everything done. You only do what you can, and you keep on moving and keep trying each week, each day you get up and try again, do things. And many of the things I tried, I just never got done. I thought, for instance, that we ought to have a commission to look at how we brought veterans home, warriors home from war, and brought them back into the community. And I thought there ought to be a national commission to decide how we do that for everybody, because we have lots of people who are out there using drugs, and they're homeless on the streets, and they're all these things. People say, well, who are these? And, well, many of them are veterans. And we haven't taken care of them as they came back from war and helped them get integrated back into the society. If you study history, the Native Americans, the Cheyenne and the Apaches and the various tribes, the Sioux, always had a way of bringing their warriors back into the community.
The fold. Right.
But not the United States government. We just bring them home and say, well, you're home. Good luck. See you.
Oh.
And many of them are failing. And so they wind up in all the problems that we see in the society.
Well, we do recruit our soldiers from high school and underprivileged families quite a bit. Am I correct in that? The perception. Correct.
Well, because we offer them benefits like they can go to college, or they can have a $20,000 signing bonus or whatever. And for kids who come from underprivileged backgrounds who aren't scheduled to go to college and don't have the backing of their parents in helping them go to college, the military is one way to get started in life. And many youngsters begin that way. And, some succeed, but lots don't, because one way or another, they get out of the military and then they aren't prepared to deal with the society.
Right. And so, one could say that perhaps the unfortunate and underprivileged background could be responsible partially for the lack of support on a familial level. And then on top of that, of course, you may be correct there in saying that our government do not quite provide them the sufficient training or support that they need to reintegrate into society. So these are things that we definitely can do better. But I want to underline that familial support, in addition to governmental support, probably is, both needed to help these veterans reintegrate back into society. Would you think that is a good statement to make?
Well, it's absolutely the whole idea of post-traumatic stress disorder. That wasn't even a diagnosis when I was in the Navy in 1968 to 70. But gradually we began to realize that everybody coming back from war has been affected by the war in a very negative way.
Right.
We take a young person and we teach him to be a killer. And we send them over and we say, kill people, kill everybody you can, kill as many as you can. And then when we're done with them, we bring them home and we turn that person into somebody on the streets of Nampa, Idaho, or Missoula, Montana, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's all they've been trained to do is kill.
Right.
We
They don't have
haven't
any real
taken them
skills.
and help them develop the skills to live in the society. And that's really what, then they get confused and they don't know, they can't have anybody to talk to, and they're depressed and they're upset, and they have all these dreams about what happened and everything. And we don't give them the care until they become a problem.
Right.
They become a problem, they go to jail.
Yeah.
Or if they become a real big problem, we put them maybe get in the VA hospital. But most of them struggle along in their lives and don't function very well and don't get themselves a job. They wind up living on the street and begging for, I mean, outside of my office building in Seattle, there was always 2 or 3 veterans sitting there asking for money. And you say, well, why? I tried to direct them to programs, and they'd say, well, they don't like guys like me because I'm a veteran. And so we have not taken it as a society that we could use our young people and put them in war. But we have a responsibility when we're done doing that to bring them home and work them back into the society.
Well, that's a very compassionate point of view, and I see that permeate through your messages in Washington and Washington, D.C. You take a very compassionate position, possibly both as a physician, as well as an individual to these societal problems. I would remiss and this is going to be concurrent with the questions that I will be asking, because there is an issue that I want to bring up today later on that is consistent with the underlying theme of how mental health is being developed in the United States, because, I came from Vietnam. I don't know if you know that. And my country of origin had been plagued with warfare for thousands of years against the Chinese, against the French, and then later on the American War, which is called the Vietnam War here. So our people from my home country are not unfamiliar with warfare, and perhaps we are trained to be resilient to fight, and it's maybe in our genetics or in our blood by now, but we experience war continuously in the culture where I came from, although I personally have not, because I came here, I grew up during non-wartime peacetime, and came here. So all my experience, admittedly, had been through studying, through reading books and listening to the previous generation discussing the wars, the Vietnam War, the American War, and previous wars. So in the next half of the show, I would love to explore a couple of subjects that relate to your medical background and your political experience. We have to take a 3-minute break until 3 p.m. For a few announcements, and then we will be right back with our messages from Dr. Jim, or from Jim, Congressman, retired Congressman Jim McDermott. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions you want to ask Dr. McDermott, please write in, and I will read your questions if it's consistent with the theme of our conversation today. 3 minutes, and we'll be back with Dr. Jim McDermott, former U.S. Representative.
Rainier Avenue Radio.
Điều kỳ diệu nào đó sẽ xảy ra khi bạn thắt dây an toàn. Đó là điều kỳ diệu khi chúng ta đặt điện thoại của mình ngoài tầm với, hoặc cung cấp thêm chỗ cho ai đó trên xe đạp của họ. Một hành động nhỏ dừng lại để ai đó băng qua đường. Đó là một vẻ đẹp. Ngay cả việc bắt xe về nhà sau khi uống rượu cũng rất anh hùng. Bởi vì tất cả những điều nhỏ nhặt đó đóng vai trò to lớn cho việc giữ an toàn cho chúng ta. Cùng nhau, chúng ta đến đó.
Rainier Avenue Radio presents All Music, All Day Saturday. Music, All Day Saturday. This is Edwin Bailey, Bulldog Blue. Jazz from the Cabinets.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Start time.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pierce. This is Start Time.
Saturdays, all music, all day. Reggae Hour, K-Fox Night.
You looking for the perfect beat? Yeah, it's the beat of the box.
Fresh Juice, B-Money in there.
Myself, B-Money.
Honey Size Patron.
Taylor Hart.
This is Spencia, the Northwest Rap Game.
DJ Medina. Chad Cheddar. Northwest Rat Game.
Sergio Lacour's Love Line.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio Lacour. Go to the phone line. Tell them who we just
Sea Monster Radio, Mo Jams. It's your jam.
We're live. Welcome to Mo Jam Mondays. This is KZ of KZ Music Media. Caller Goddess for Mo Jam Mondays.
Just my opinion. God is inspiration. Music. All day and all night. Saturdays on RainierAvenueRadio.org.
This is your Rainier Avenue Radio.world community update on the new City of Seattle Community Resource Hub, a one-stop online shop for city resources and information. Supported by the Seattle Department of Neighborhoods, the Community Resource Hub can be found at seattle.gov/resource-hub. It's an online portal of city resources, information, and tools to help community members connect and engage with city government and with each other. That is seattle.gov/resource-hub.
Big Day of Play is a celebration of Seattle's diversity, and it encourages neighbors, communities, and families to have fun, build relationships, and be active together. It's a day to play your way. We'll see you on Saturday, August 20th from 12 to 6 p.m. at Rainier Playfields next to the Rainier Community Center. Don't forget to RSVP at bigdayofplay.org with promo code BDOP14 for a chance to win prizes.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out our show schedule, updated weekly at RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
And we're back. This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio. And today we have a special guest who had been with our state for many, many years. He's currently retired, but before his 28 years as a politician, both on a state level and national level, he was also a seasoned veteran psychiatrist with a great career. So please welcome to Afternoons with Monique, Dr. Jim McDermott. Welcome back, Jim. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. So a question that our listeners and myself were curious to know, what can you give us with your background as both a physician and legislator? Tell us your insights about the opioid crisis. That's the first question I'd like to ask. And I have about 4 or 5 of these in the next 27 minutes that we want to cover. So I would like to give you a heads up on that.
Well, the opioid crisis is a very complicated thing. If people don't have anything that's running their life that makes any sense, they look for ways to relieve the pain. And one of the ways to relieve pain is to use drugs. And some people use marijuana, and some use heroin, and some people get hooked on opioids because doctors give it to them. The patient says, I have pain in my leg, or I have pain in my stomach, or whatever. And the doctor gives them opioids. Then they get hooked on it and they can't get off it. And there's very little drug treatment going on in the country. So people, once they get hooked on a drug, have a very difficult time getting off. And that just is kind of like going downhill, down the drain. I mean, there's no way to stop it. and it requires the state to step in with treatment for people with drugs. And our society has treated it like it was a moral issue. And if you have trouble with drugs, it's because you're morally bad. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of people who've gotten hooked on drugs who are not morally bad people. They just got into a situation where they started taking something, and we need to help them get out of that. But our society has, people in some countries, if they have problems with drugs, in Holland, if you're in the Netherlands, and you have a need for drugs and you can't get off, they provide them free. There's no crime involved at all. You don't have to steal anything. You don't have to beat up on anybody to get money. You don't have to do anything. Just go down and say you need some heroin or whatever it is you need, and they're taken care of. So you can be humane in dealing with this situation, or you can say it's your problem, you figure it out, and we're not going to help you. And what we've got is a society that we're not helping most of the people who have the problem.
Well, some people say that we should allow them to exercise their free will and strive on their own. It's not that we don't care, but a lot of the problem could be held by personal striving, personal motivation, self-motivation, rather than using outside forces as a prop, as a crutch to. But what you're saying is in other places, and I don't know anything about this, so I would like to ask you. So you're saying in other places in the world, they have places to help the addicts, and without. Can you explain that a little bit more? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if you take the position that I don't have any responsibility for you, Monique. You're on your own. So if you got a problem, don't come to me. It's your problem.
I see.
Then you are going to cause problems in the society because of the problems you have.
Right.
And we're going to have to pay for it anyway. We're going to have to pay for it because you're sleeping in the street or you whatever. And it's much better for us to say, Monique has a problem. Let's help her with that. And keep her off the street and get her back to a job and get her working regularly. And if we as a society ignore our fellow citizens, then we are going to pay for it in the long run in more prisons, and in more hospital care, and in more police operations. And look at all the money in the drug war in the United States. Have we stopped drugs? No. We've spent millions of dollars putting people in jail and all this stuff, and we have never solved the problem. So it means we should step back and look at what we're doing and how we're trying to do anything. And instead of using it law enforcement and it's your moral responsibility, you're a bad person. We got to say, you're a person with a problem. Let's us together figure out how we can get you back on your feet. And it's a difference in attitude of the society. And our society is not gonna change as long as we say it's somebody else's problem. It's the same way with guns. You've got all these people getting shot and killed with guns, and people walking around saying, well, it's not my problem. As long as they don't shoot me, I don't care. You can carry a gun if you want. And we have guns in France, where I'm living right now. People say to me, their first question to me always is, why do Americans walk around shooting each other?
Right.
What is wrong with you people?
Right.
And it's a good question to ask Americans. Why do we allow ourselves to live in a country where people walk around shooting people? And I read in the newspaper on Sunday that they're teaching kindergarten teachers how to shoot guns so that they can go to teach 6-year-old kids how to read and have a gun on their hip So if anything happens, they can pull it out and shoot somebody.
Wow.
What kind of a society is that?
Well, that's why
It's
that
the
when
only
we
society in the world where kindergarten teachers are going to be carrying guns.
it seems to me, if I may inject this thought, and of course, with all due respect to your experience, if I may say this, so I came from a country that is more socialistic and communistic, and now I enjoy the freedom to do business, to freedom of speech of America, and the freedom to do the things that I feel I need to do for my family. So I am incredibly grateful for those opportunities. But at the same time, it feels it's due time for me to contribute back to the country that hosted and groomed and helped cultivated me into the person I am today. So this thought that I put out there, and considering all of the experience that you've had, people say that we have what you said is what we experience as a nation, and and we address the problem as a grown when it's already fully blown. It's not preventative. It is we only treat the problem once it become blown up full scale, and it's very difficult to stop at that point, and the cost of which hospitalization, jail, prosecution, all these costs a tantamount on taxpayers back, and the burden that we as working citizens of the United States have to carry. And I understand some of my viewer wrote in and say, we pay plenty of taxes, and I actually looked this up. We are not taxing the people of our country as much as some others like France or European developed nations. So I got that part, and I understood that. So we were low in terms of taxation, but at the same time, a lot of people feel that we pay plenty of taxes. How come some of those tax dollars don't go toward prevention measures that started from a very early age? My experience had been anecdotal and not empirical. I'm a mother of two teenagers that I've raised. I took some time off. I had the opportunity to raise these children, so I get a chance to observe how they grow up, and I don't know how other parents could get a chance to bond with their children the way I got the chance to bond with mine. And I intuitively, in a scientific kind of way, feel that the lack of compassion started that early. So it is said that 75% of brain development started from 0 to 3. And so in those infantry formative years, children, people are now who are adult, form their bond and attachment. And this is your playground right here, attachment, child psychiatry in those formative years. But we have parents that have dual income families, and we agree, consensus is that we have to have two income family in order to make ends meet in our country. But I couldn't do it. And I have to make that decision based on that time. I can't make a decision for other family, but intuitively, when I leave my child at the daycare or with another person to raise, when I went back to work, I did not feel right about it in my heart. And therefore, I had made plans to stay home with them, but it is an individual choice that I had to make for my own family. And each family have to make those kind of call. But when they are not in position to have a one income or 1.5 income, and both parents have to work, I feel that piece of 0 to 3 or 0 to 5 is when those individuals that are missing the bonding experience with their primary caregiver, that create this hole in their heart, in their soul, that they carry out throughout their growing years and develop them into these adults that, you know, we have a lot of resources and material goods around us. I look around, I have so many things that I maybe don't even need. We load it with things, but inside we are an empty vessel of emotion. So that connection, that bonding, and this is not just one generation. I've seen this, and you can, you know, if you can correct me, that I would appreciate that too. This has gone back several generations, like probably starting from the industrial revolution, when women starting to join the workforce, and increasingly, and now it is now a norm for families to work and leave children in daycare and have other people care for them. And I know that you believe that those years, you know, one can hand off to daycares to take care of our children sufficiently. But my personal observation, and it's just my humble opinion, is that it's not enough to have some stranger taking care of a child. There's nobody like mom or dad to take care of those children. So I'd like to hear your comments and your insight on this as a physician. You know, working policies on these with the Ways and Means Committee. Do we have measures or initiative or individual that support what I just said?
When I began my training in psychiatry back in 1963, John Kennedy had just been president, and Lyndon Johnson was president after John Kennedy was killed. And one of the things that they had in the schools in those days was started in those years was something called Head Start. Everybody knew what you just said is absolutely right. And so we said, we're going to give a head start to every kid in the society. We're going to create programs to cover the years from 1 or 2 years old on up to 6 when you actually start school. Those first 4 years are very, very important in terms of learning all kinds of things, both social skills as well as intellectual skills. And if you waste those 4 years and don't do anything with a kid except sit him in front of a television set and give him a graham cracker and call that daycare, that ain't daycare. That's not teaching him what a mother teaches a child as they're growing up. A mother's teaching them all the time things. And if you don't have somebody who understands children teaching them these kinds of things when the mother's at work somewhere, the kid is losing. And he winds up, or she winds up at 6 years old in school, and is a problem because they're behind the rest of the students, and they're disruptive because they don't know how to behave, so what universal daycare, I mean, I tried, and many have tried it. We tried it many times in the society, and Joe Biden had it in his program here in 2022 to have a program for universal daycare. But the Congress decides, well, we want to spend more money on nuclear weapons, or we want to spend money on going to war in places that most people couldn't find on a map.
Right.
Or if you consider what Vietnam War was, we had 58,000 people die over there in a place for no reason whatsoever. And when the war was over, we hadn't won anything. And the Vietnamese went off and did their own thing. I mean, that was a whole waste of our money and our time that we could have been spending on our own children. But we wanted to be dominant in the world. Well, if you want to be dominant in the world, then you're going to have to sacrifice your children, because that's what's happening. If you won't tax people to pay for both guns and daycare,
right?
People are willing to tax for guns. Oh God, let's have guns. Let's have weapons. We want to be able to go to the moon, and we got a president who wants to go to Mars, and we got all kinds of crazy stuff. But we don't take care of 2-year-old kids, our own children, in the schools.
Right. I understand.
Unless we change our priorities as a society, we will continue to have the problems we're having now, because there are societies where they have freedom of speech and they can do whatever they want, and they can do whatever kind of business. Go to Denmark, go to Sweden, go to Germany, go to Italy, go to all these Western European countries. You can do all that, but they also have a social safety net, taking care of the children. And if your mother gets sick, who goes home and takes care of her? Well, you can't leave your job. By God, you got to go to work.
Right.
Because we don't give family leave.
Right.
We don't respect the elderly in the country or the very young in the country. We say they're on their own. And that we pay the price for that with the chaos you see today in the country. And I would agree with you. There should be some changes, and I tried my best to do it, and I didn't get the votes to do it. Maybe the next group will do it. They'll see it. We've got to finally do something about guns, for instance, or we got to do something about drugs on the street. Who wants to come to San Francisco or to Seattle and walk down the streets and see all the homeless laying around all over the place? It looks like India, for heaven's sakes. Or any one of a lot of third world countries where they don't take care of their people. We are acting like a third world country in terms of whether we take care of those people in our own society that are our mothers and our brothers and our sisters and our children, and we just ignore them. We just say, step over them and keep on walking. And that's got to change in our society.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing that point of view. People talk about investing in education every election, the governors and all the different politicians. But the thing is, I feel like the problem is that we're not treating the problem. We're treating the problem, but not the cause. The preventative measures are not being addressed from the root. So I bring this on, and I feel like an hour is not enough to talk about this, obviously, but it is a start of a conversation to further develop. If there are people out there, politicians, who are seeing this point of view and want to address the problem at the root level. And when I talk about root level, and I apologize, I got to veer the conversation back to the issue of childhood development and able to afford family who can work 1.5 or one income, and for a short period when they have young children, so that they can develop a new generation of healthy individual that will save us tremendously in prison cost, in health care cost, in prosecution, judicial cost at that level. So the problem, once it becomes full blown, will cost us as society and taxpayers tenfold if we would just allocate some of the money that we collect from taxpayers toward educating not the children but the parents who starting a family. Has there been any initiative on our state level, or anyone who had been promoting a educational program for young parents or new parents? Jim?
There have been places where it's been tried, little bits, but there are countries in Europe where when a mother has a baby, a nurse comes to visit the mother and the baby in her own home after she's gone home. Now, if you have a baby in this country, in America, and your mother doesn't live in the neighborhood, if she happens to live at 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles or, Florida or somewhere, who is going to help the woman who just had the baby raise the baby and know the answers to the questions about what the baby needs and how the baby needs to be taken care of and all that. If in some societies, they send a nurse in to do it. So somebody comes in once a week and says to the mother, how's Joey doing? Or how is Sally doing? And the mother says, well, he isn't eating very much, or he's not sleeping, or whatever, he's cranky. The nurse can be involved and figure out if there's some problem and help the mother be a better mother and take care of the child. I mean, there are programs around the world that deal with these issues in countries that we, when we want to say a bad word about somebody, we say, you're a socialist. Now, what a socialist is really is somebody who cares about his neighbors, who believes he has a social responsibility. If you think your only responsibility in the society is to you and your 2 children, if that's it, nothing else matters, then we got an awful society, because if something happens to you, who's going to take care of your kids at that point? You're going to look to the society that says,
absolutely.
No,
you have to care.
What's
you
that?
have to care about, we no man is an island, and we do have to care about our neighbors and support. What is the saying? It takes a village to raise a child, and everyone needs somebody sometime. So no, we cannot just care about the self and not being affected by the society at large. So yes, absolutely, I agree with you there that we do need to care about our neighbors, our community, in order to live in a community together successfully. So absolutely, 100%, I am agreeing with that. I only wonder if we are coming at this from a different angle, that perhaps some financial funding can go. My children are grown, they're teenagers. I don't need it personally for myself, but I do want to live in a better society where people care for one another. So supporting those young parents or those young children and new family at this point is still, I believe, is necessary. So, somehow the GPD, and I came from a financial background. We are number 1 in the world. So capitalism is working alive and well in our country. But we have to counter it, to balance it out with a certain level of care and compassion, like you are just sharing with our audience here today, in order to have a thriving and healthy society. It's like an immune system. It's like a body. We need both, feeding, but we also need preventive medicine in order to stay healthy. So not I apologize, I misspoke. Preventative measures, education, learning, in order to grow our body healthily. We cannot just consume and grow and grow and grow. Our waistline is growing bigger. Our people are growing bigger. We have 40% of the U.S. Citizens are considered overweight. So it's affecting our health, and it affects our bottom line when it comes at such a high cost to our, like, again, prison system, healthcare system. It creates such a burden on society. So I really appreciate you coming on our show and share your point of view with our viewers today, Dr. McDermott or Jim. And I hope you can come back and share more of your perspective. Everyone, I'm sorry, you were saying something?
Well, I was going to say, I wrote a book, Money,
Yes.
Love, and Power, which is the book about my experience in Congress. And it really is a book that I think people may find interesting if they want to understand how to make things change in the political process. Because if you're going to make change in the society, the things that you and I are talking about, whether we're talking about daycare or mental health care or whatever, it's going to be done in the political process through the Congress.
Absolutely.
And most people need to understand how it actually works. So that's why I wrote this book, and it's available on Amazon or at Barnes and Noble, and you can read what I think, because I think we have to have a discussion in our society about what we think is really important.
Absolutely. I am absolutely agree with you. And again, that book is called Money, Love, and Power by Jim McDermott. So if you're interested, it's a very easy read with under 200 pages. You can get through it in a couple of afternoons. So thank you, Dr. Jim, for coming on my show, Afternoons with Monique, and sharing with our audience your perspective.
All right. It's my pleasure. We'll see you again.
I hope so.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So next week, we will have episode number 104 and number 105. Cindy Lee, a children's book author, will come on Afternoons with Monique to share with us her book called Star Hug. And after that, at 2:30 next Thursday, we'll have She Devil of the China Seas by Porkville Productions. That is episode number 105. So please join us again for 2 back-to-back episodes next week on Afternoons with Monique on Rainier Avenue Radio. Have a great afternoon, everybody.